Hey, deserving listeners, The Ultimatum, Season 2. Let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
I do want to be married before having kids.
And I completely understand that. But you're saying now.
Okay, that's interesting. At first, it would seem that, looking at their names here, Brian and Lisa, that Brian is potentially reacting, because if someone's like, hey, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, let's get married, and you interpret it like some kind of hostile demand or some kind of controlling statement when it isn't, then what's going on there? Or does she do it in a controlling, demanding way, in a critical way, instead of saying, hey, I want to marry you, let's spend the rest of our lives together, or it hurts my feelings when you don't want to get married to me and I'm worried. That's different than saying, you son of a bitch, I hate you because you haven't proposed to me. Who knows? I don't know. I can't imagine her doing the latter. So maybe we'll find out.
Like, we can't even be comfortable enough to buy a house because it's like, oh, well, we're not married, so we shouldn't be buying a house. When I am, in fact, ready to buy a house. We can't even do that because we're not married.
I get it. But it's like, for me, it's like, I'm not just about to get married just so we can buy a house.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I don't know if I included this bit, but she was saying that she earns 6 figures and implying she earns more than he does, and that financially they'd be fine if they got married. So what's the big deal? That makes me wonder if, it's okay if he has his own personal goals, career-wise and financially-wise, as he, before he gets married. But I also wonder if there's some kind of sexist issue here, and I've seen it with a number of people, men, who will feel emasculated and not a real man because their wife makes more money than them, which I find just to be just so, each to their own, but it seems very limiting and limited. But so I don't know. I'm not accusing him of that. Of course, there was no indication of that. But I will point out that he did say, I'm not about to get married just because I want to buy a house. And I thought the same thing she thought of, like, wait, what? That's not what we're talking about. And so, I wonder what's going on there. He seems, okay. So sometimes when I am beginning to watch these shows, I will get a certain Spidey sense about some of these couples. And it's not a magical thing or a supernatural thing. It's, I guess, an experience thing where I've seen enough couples and their conflict and evaluated it and studied it and taught it for students for almost 30 years now that you just see certain things. I imagine, I don't know why I always go to plumbers. I think I secretly want to be a plumber, that they can see a problem and instantly have a pretty good hypothesis as to what the problem is, and then that directs their investigation, and then they find, yes, that was a problem. Or a physician that just has a lot of experience with certain kinds of issues. They don't need to go through the whole checklist. They can see pretty quickly, and that'll lead them to a short set of hypotheses. They investigate those only, and they do discover what the issue is. Now, that, of course, can limit you and lead to you not investigating some things that you probably should. But my Spidey senses are going off on this couple right away, just that first escalation that he did. And then now with this. Now, maybe because y'all might have already watched this whole season because they put most of the episodes in one batch. I'm in the first episode. I'm like in the beginning of the first episode. And so I think I'm just kind of curious about my Spidey sense, because in the past, for the past few years of me watching reality TV on this YouTube channel, there are times when I will say something or think something about a couple, and I'll say, well, how do I know? we don't have any information. We just have one tiny little interaction with just a few sentences. How could I possibly know anything from this? But some of the time, not all the time, I don't know what rate, but some of the time it does work out that way. I only noticed this because people would actually email or comment below and say, because they had watched ahead. And by the way, in the comments, refrain from spoilers or say spoiler, because if I read the comments, I don't want and other people too, because some people don't even watch the show. They just watch my videos. And so, refrain from spoiling. But some people will say, without spoiling, they'll be like, wow, Dr. Kirk, you're more right than you realize, keep watching, that kind of a thing. And I'll think, oh, wow, that's interesting that just from a tiny little interaction that something was detectable, right, to someone that has experience in it. And I don't know, but I'm just going to take a guess and say that if I was to put money on one of the couples becoming the most conflictual so far, but I haven't seen in depth. We've only seen really not in depth, but in depth for the first half of the first episode. Just 3 of the couples, so there could be issues with others, but so far I would put my money on this couple because one, that he escalated things pretty quickly. I mean, it wasn't tremendous, but it felt like, let's rewatch it and break it down, because this is a frequent part of conflict, that someone will say something that is seemingly disjointed from the previous thing. So, and it can be very frustrating, and you see the frustration on our faces, like, that's not what I meant. So let's break this down, because I think it's important to analyze.
Like, we can't even be comfortable enough to buy a house because it's like, oh, well, we're not married, so we shouldn't be buying a house, when I am in fact ready to buy a house. We can't even do that because we're not married.
I get it. But it's like, for me, it's like, I'm not just about to get married just so we can buy a house.
That's not what I'm saying.
So what was she saying? What she was saying was, because of the tracking, you have to follow the whole journey to why she was saying this. What she was saying was, how come you don't want to get married? I want to get married. And she was referring to how he had said, I think in this interview earlier, that he didn't want to get married because of finances. And she is making a point of, that doesn't make sense to me, unless you can give me some, she didn't say this, but, unless you can give me more reasons as to why you feel like you need extra money. I have a lot of money, and finances will be okay. And she even kind of words it this way of, you hit the jackpot, because, I will share my money with you. You can do what you want to with your career, obviously, but you don't have to support me financially. I can actually help you out if you want to. And I want to move my life forward, and I can't even buy a house because, I want to buy a house, but I can't because we're not married yet. I don't want to buy a house together if we're not married. And I feel like my life's on hold because, we're not getting married. And, so her point is, if you're not getting married to me because of finances, I'll take care of the finances to some extent, or I'll take care of 2/3 of the finances, or whatever it is. And then he says, well, I'm not going to get married just to buy a house. Okay. So I think from his perspective, I always think of it as, the words that people say are the end result of several steps in their mind that they had. So I'm going to take a guess, I don't know, it's just a guess, that as he's hearing that, he's thinking, okay, I don't have a way out of this, because I did say finances, and now she's saying reasons why I shouldn't have to worry about finances. And so I'm kind of cornered, and I don't know what to say to get, I want to win this argument. I want to win this point that I'm trying to make, is that fundamentally it doesn't make sense for us to get married, or for me to get married. I think that's where he's operating from. And then she's also kind of criticizing me. It's not direct, but she's saying that she is losing out on life, kind of, because she can't buy a house. She wants something, and because he won't make a choice to marry her, then she can't get what she wants. And so he feels guilty about that. He feels ashamed. I don't think he wants to lose her. I think he actually does want to be with her, but he doesn't want to get married yet for whatever reason. And so he would worry that because she has this complaint, then that would mean she might leave me. This happens all the time. It's a good rule of thumb to be following, that when you are in conflict with your partner, when you dig down deep enough, both or one person in that conflict is on an ongoing basis being triggered about their worry about losing the other person in an irrational manner. It would be irrational to believe that at this very moment that he's going to lose her because she can't buy a house. Maybe even in the long term, that's not like her huge priority, you know what I mean? But so often for us, particularly if you have traumas around this, any kind, a more common example is the two of you are together and your partner says to you that, say you're married and you're living together and your partner says, I wish that our house was bigger so that it wouldn't be so cluttered all the time. Okay, so you hear that, and but it's a possibility that as you work your way through the series of thoughts in your mind, the first thing is you observe that complaint, and then you think, okay, can I solve it? Right? That might be the first thought you go to. And this is, split second thinking. Can I solve it? No, because we can't afford a bigger house. And if I were to get a better job that would pay more, my life would be ruined, or that's not even possible because I didn't make the right choices or the right moves regarding my education or whatever. The split second thoughts, you think, okay, can I solve it by buying a bigger house? No. Okay, what does that mean? That means that my partner is going to be upset and unhappy, and maybe even unhappy with our finances, maybe even unhappy with me. Therefore, my partner, if this aggravates them long enough, they might actually leave me because of the clutter in the house. Now, when you say it out loud, it doesn't make any sense. It's irrational. But so many of us are operating. I feel pretty differentiated, pretty self-aware. I operate on this level, I would say daily. It happens all the time. So then what might come out of my mouth, though, and I'm not aware of those steps, is I might say something like, it's not that cluttered. Or, you know that prices of houses in this town? Or I might say, well, I did want to buy that bigger house, but you didn't want to. Okay. So all these are, again, the result of this long string of thoughts. And then the other string of thoughts is, okay, how do I solve this? I'm going to lose my partner. What do I do about that? Well, and I've talked about how frustrating this tendency is for me and all of us. But when I observe it, it's just like, oh, people, stop doing this to yourself. It's such a sabotaging action of, I need to shut this down. I need to get rid of that feeling. If my wife said that and said, oh, I wish we had a bigger house because of all this clutter, the best answer is, yeah, I agree. Or yeah, that sucks. And if I say something like that, I'm more likely not to lose her because we are together on this, right? Even if she's blaming me, right? I could just say, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm with you. And I wish we had a bigger house too. And I'm trying, but so few of us do that, because of these underlying steps that we go through cognitively that are these automatic thoughts that we're unaware of. And then we're like, okay, solution, shut it down. I need to get that person, I need to get my partner to not have those thoughts. I need to get them to change their mind about this. And, so let's say my wife says that, clutter, it's frustrating, I wish we had a bigger house. Now, in that moment, she's not saying, I think you're a horrible husband because we don't have a bigger house. Or she's not saying, I'm about to leave you because of the clutter in this house. All she's just randomly talking. She might not even care about the clutter that much or care about the size of the house. She might just be spouting about something, right? So, but in that moment, my solution is, okay, you're wrong about that. So I don't know if this is what's happening with Lisa and Brian, but it kind of looks like that. And, it'd be okay if he said something like, well, yeah, I'm sorry that you can't buy a house because I'm still on the fence about getting married. And, that's a bummer, but I don't know what to do about that because I'm still on the fence. So I'm sorry about that. Just say something like that instead of, well, I'm not going to marry. But, oh yeah, that's right. So earlier he was saying that I feel like I'm being pressured all the time. So I think what we're maybe seeing, at least the tip of the iceberg for him, is a schema of pressure and control from the outside, of someone that has, in his early childhood, been stripped of any kind of control or something. And any kind of even minor indication that someone is asking him to do something, for other people, they might consider it to be a reasonable request or a tolerable request. It's intolerable to him because of the traumas that he went through. I don't know. Let's see if that hypothesis pans out at all.
Brian, I was just saying that adds to my frustration. You're trying to decide if you don't want to get married, or is it me?
Or you mean?
That's a great question. Is it me or is it just marriage in general?
Or are you the one that I want to get married to?
Right.
No, I don't think it's that.
Well, I wasn't convincing. Yeah. If it wasn't that, you would think someone would say, "Oh, no. I love you. I want to be with you." It's just, I'm not sure if getting married. So now, it's hard to know what's in his heart based on these filmed conversations. But if I were her, that would have hurt.
Okay. I don't know. I feel like you hesitated with answering that.
There's no hesitation.
Metaphorically, I see this game of playing catch, playing baseball, and she throws the ball and he just like turns around and the ball just bounces off his back. She keeps giving him, things to do a back and forth, and he just goes, eh. And she says, I feel like you were hesitating there. That's a vulnerable thing for her to say. I think she was maybe even contemplating shutting down. She's like, okay, because I think she detected what I saw, which was someone that was very unsure and maybe even lying. I mean, I don't want to accuse him of anything, but certainly not confident in his response. It's not like you're asking someone, so you want onion rings or French fries? And the person's like, no, I don't, well, French fries? It's not that, right? You're talking to the person of concern about, do you love me and not want to get married to me? Or do you not want to be with me? And that's really the problem. Which one is it? It's a big question. And if someone asked me that, my wife asked me that question, I'd be like, oh boy, I better not only answer this in a very, convincing way and show that I understand the weight of this question, but I would really want to make sure that she understood what I was saying to her. I wouldn't just give a short response and moving on with our day, because that question of, do you know how I feel about you, is an important question, unless you're not really into someone or you have some kind of weird hostility around you when there are any kind of conversations that are critical or emasculating or pressuring. I don't know what the factor is or the landscape at all, but then I think she contemplated shutting down, which would be a normal response there, but she decided to, again, throw the ball and be vulnerable and say, hey, it kind of sounded like you were hesitant there. I think hoping that he would say, oh, well, okay. No, I was just kind of thinking about this, but I totally love you and I want to be with you. Or just answer the question in a more definitive way in which is more convincing as to what's going on in your heart. But then let's rewind. Wait.
I don't know. I feel like you hesitated with answering that.
There's no hesitation.
There's no hesitation. Okay. Anything else? Now, maybe he will say something here.
All right. It just sucks. I just wish you were a little bit more, I don't know. Maybe it's some age difference. Maybe I'm just too far ahead.
Yeah. I think what's going on in her mind is she's thinking something's wrong here. And what is it? What is going on here? And she's looking for something to land on, and she goes to age. Their age difference is not that much. She's 31, he's 28. So in my book, that's basically the same age. I mean, my wife and I are similar to that. She's 2.5 years younger than me. So, they might be around that. So I think of me and my wife being essentially the same age. So, but is there that much of a developmental maturity difference between 28 and 31? No, not at all. Now, some people will say, yeah, when I turned 30, it was a big difference. Okay, but not for everyone. And I will say that this is a common perspective that people have, that a lot of things have to do with age or even gender, right? They might think, oh, well, maybe it's because you're a guy. Maybe that's why you're so confusing and so lacking in commitment or something. There's a lot of notions about that. Well, men, they fear commitment, and that is not borne out in the data. There might be tendencies and bell curves, but certainly there are a lot of women that would be, framed or seen as being fearful of commitment. Also, what do we mean by fear of commitment? So the little side note on that, whenever I hear that phrase, fear of commitment, usually what I find the fear is fear of rejection. The person is not afraid of commitment. They're afraid of committing and then being rejected. And so they're just avoiding the whole enterprise. And I suppose a minority of people that are fearful of commitment just aren't into you. They just want to keep their options open because they're just not wanting to let go of the possibility of being with other people.
I don't think that's necessarily the case.
I feel like if we're going off the timeline that you're talking about, I'll be damn near like 40. And I feel like I could be quicker along with somebody else.
I mean, that's what you got to do then. Surprisingly, some guys who've given the people the ultimatum, and that's an interesting perspective,
Yeah. So she is saying, hey, I'm on a timeline here with kids and age. And then he says, well, then do that, essentially. So, yeah, I keep getting more ticks in the column of the hypothesis that I don't know what the problem is, but that there is something significantly, I don't know if it's problematic or conflictual or incompatible or I don't know. There's a lot of disconnection here.
Surprisingly, some guys who've given the people the ultimatum, and that's an interesting perspective,
Okay, so we're hearing another tick in the column of, I don't know what to call it, but a particular idea of what masculinity or manhood is. Earlier, there was some indication that maybe he doesn't feel fantastic about her earning more than him. There wasn't really an indication of that, so I shouldn't say that. But definitely here, he's saying, apparently there's some men here that are giving the ultimatum. I mean, that's bizarre. So what were the different men that are giving ultimatum? 2 out of the 5 couples, the guy is giving the ultimatum. And so he says, apparently, some of the men are giving ultimatum. I mean, that's a weird perspective. And it's not a weird perspective for you and me, of course, but the way that he sees the world. And if that's true, then I wonder if that's a factor that he feels like or it's another one of the factors that he feels like to be a true man, he needs to resist or to keep his options open. I don't know. Maybe he had something like that modeled to him. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just cataloging ideas in my head as possibilities based on almost no information. All right. Well, if you ever want to vote on member-exclusive videos, you have to go to the community tab because the polls that I put up might not actually show on your feed. The other thing is if you are a member and you vote for something and it doesn't win in a previous poll, feel free to suggest it in a future poll. I think some people are suggesting things in the member exclusive video suggestion poll and then they lose and then they just give up. But even though they got a number of votes, it seems like it's only a matter of time before those sorts of things will bubble to the top. So, continue to suggest whatever you want and just know that it's great when everyone adds to the conversation and vote. Of course, you want to upvote things, thumbs up the things that you want to see for the member exclusive video. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.